Firstly, can I say thank you very much to the NNR board, our panel, colleagues, and everyone else. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep to time because we seem to have delayed a lot, so apologies if I go a little bit over. But I think for me, okay, now first slide. And maybe just to say the Green Connection is an eco-justice organization. You can just, next slide. We're a non-profit. We're currently working a lot on the oil and gas sector, but we felt as part of being part of society, it's important to have our say in this particularly important project. So next. And as there are new people here, just in case you didn't know, when the nuclear deal was found to be unlawful, and therefore we are no longer committed to a 1 billion rand debt to the Russians, 1 trillion, then Makoma and myself were given an international award for stopping what was clearly going to be a corrupt deal. So from a oversight and good governance, that's where I stand. If we're going to make these decisions, we're going to make them properly, in my view, and if we're going to try to cut corners, then civil society is going to be standing in the way. Next slide. So from our perspective, our context is it a good idea to extend Koeberg, or are there other things we should be doing? And I think it's important to have that context, even though the NNR is concerned with safety and the environment. You can't make that decision without an understanding or the context of how much it's going to cost to keep it safe. So I've just put up, this is our challenges. We have to look at sustainability. We have to look at the least damage. Climate change is obviously key. Social benefits, the affordability, and that I just want to put the maintenance being a critical one here. And then the issues around democracy, and that's what we're here for today, is to have that opportunity to have our voices heard. So I have a question for the panel, which is these presentations, I'm assuming there will be a space where the NNR would feed back to the public about how they are considering the points that are made. Next slide. So this is just very quick, is just, you know, there is a critical role for a national nuclear regulator, because these are just a whole lot of incidents, is that we have radioactivity, we use it for medical reasons, we use it for other scientific reasons, and things can go wrong because we are human. So, next slide. So, I'm just giving you this reason that we need the NNR. And, next slide. And for me, the NNR is the most important body in the whole nuclear industry. And you are the people standing between us and a Koeberg meltdown, for whatever reason. If something goes wrong, we are relying on you to make sure that we are safe. And on that basis, for me, we need you to be able to be independent, to stand up and never bow to the pressure from the top, which might say, we need electricity, you know, you guys are exaggerating the safety issues, continue. And I might just say that our energy minister did make those comments in a parliamentary meeting when he first came into power. So it's critical that you hold the highest standards. This is everything under control. I think we have to ask this. And it's not so much about, that's a radioactive source. This was a colleague who had a measurement thing. Just forgotten the name. And and that was the spike. The issue was the guy driving that vehicle had obviously no understanding that there was something, a radioactive source in the bakkie. Maybe it wasn't in its container, but it was a problem. And the general public have no clue when they see that maybe there's a problem and they shouldn't stand close to it. I think it says they don't come close. I mean, how are you going to know that when you see it or in the traffic? So awareness is also important, and I think that's part of your role. And that's the scrap metal crossing the border. I mean, we know there's a problem. So for us, we need an NNR that's well capacitated, well funded, and is on the ground and operating, because our health and our lives depend on that. Okay, next. So, and I just want to reiterate that. The NNR's job is not to promote nuclear, it's not to be on the side of Eskom, it's to make sure that we are protected against any potential damage. That's, for me, the critical factor. That's why you're here, that's why I'm here. There's no point me talking to the Nuclear Promotion Society, because I don't believe that they are going to listen to me. But you, as the regulator, you are, by law, your job is to make sure I'm safe. So if I tell you something, you have to listen, you have to take action, you have to make sure that what I'm saying to you can be addressed and you are convinced that it's safe. Your job is the most secure on the planet, because nuclear waste will continue for thousands of years before it's safe, so you don't have a problem with job insecurity. You can't be closed down. Although, of course, you can have your funding cut, which has happened in the past, making it difficult to do your job. Next slide. So again, the National Environmental Management Act speaks to the importance of the precautionary approach. This act is applicable, obviously, to your work, that we must have public participation, and not only that, that people have to have the opportunity to develop understanding and skills in order to participate. So for me, that means that your role is to go out there and make sure that people know what's happening so they can come and comment. So this hall should be packed with people who want to come and say something. Then access to information, and I'm going to talk to this a little bit just now, but we need to have information in order to be able to make decisions and give advice and give input. And then the other issue is environmental justice. I just want to, it's a small point, don't have much time to speak today, but there are many people living in informal settlements around here. Certainly within the 80-kilometer zone of contingency, and also within, I would imagine, the 16-kilometer. I think we saw them last time. So how is the NNR making sure that people in informal settlements are safe? What are the things that are in place to ensure that they are safe? Next slide. So that says Memorandum of Agreement at the top. So we have recently been able to get these agreements between Eskom and the various city and government around the emergency plan. So part of the problem with information is we had to pire this. There was some stuff in the public arena, but there's some stuff which we had to pire. When we pire, we are told, oh yeah, but we don't have that, somebody else has it, you must go to the other person and ask them. Why? This is all information that should be there, and PIRE should be used or shouldn't be used for information that is needed in order for people to understand what are their responsibilities and roles if there is a problem. The other thing which I've been looking for years, but I actually found out now, is that it's Eskom's job to make sure there is money, to make sure that there is an operational plan. Next slide. So again, this integrated Koeberg nuclear emergency plan, multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral, and it's got to be able to provide a rapid response and prevent disasters. So the reason I'm raising this is we've looked through various documents. I'm not going to talk to it all today, but these things are very important, but it's also important that the public knows they exist. And they are aware of who they must go to when they see something that's not quite right. And what are you going to do about it? I mean, I always have to ask Gino for coffee, but anyway. Next slide. So this is not Koeberg. Please let me make that very clear. But it's something that has a personal impact for me, because this is a building that I have, I know very well, and I mean, this is a rebar that is corroded, and therefore it's cracked the concrete. So I have been following this concrete repair thing, and I've done a bit of reading on it, and I mean, I'm not an expert at all, but it's been flagged in the need to fix things in the SALTO report. The problem is that the way of fixing it, which is this cathode insertion thing, is, according to after 10 years, 60% of these repairs fail. So the question is, how do we know, and what do we have in place to ensure that the concrete, the containment structure will last? Because we're asking for 20 years, so basically that means that there's going to be 2 more sets, potentially, of repairs that are needed. And the findings that I looked at was that the repairs can cost 35 billion. Now, these are all like depending on where so I'm going to put my head out on that, but the question is, that costs money. And that means that the maintenance of Koeberg is going to have to include that money to ensure that it's there. And the biggest question about the concrete is the fact that Koeberg was built and they said, well, we didn't expect this. You're building something by the sea. All of us know if you sit by the sea, your car rusts. You didn't expect that there would be seawater ingress and that there would be rebar. I don't. So that's, I don't know, those guys were in the 1970s. The other issue is that 1974 was when the concrete was laid. I don't know when the containments went in, but it's now 2024. Between 1974 and 1976. So that's about 50 years. Concrete has a lifespan of somewhere around 100 years. Sometimes it can be longer. We are 50% through the lifespan of all that concrete. What is the NNR doing to check that concrete into the future will be safe? And what are the repairs? Because I know we all talk about the cracks in the container vessel, but there's a whole lot of concrete there. It's very important that there's concrete. So how much of it is still going to need to be repaired or replaced in the ongoing extension? So I think that's, for me, something that I really would like to get a lot more information. And it's been flagged by the international guys. So it doesn't seem like it's finished. So, Eskom said they've done something. Well, to me, it doesn't sound like it's finished. And it's a bit of a concern. And the way that you do it can actually lead to more problems. And so I would like to be reassured, because I live in Cape Town, that that concrete structure is really safe and will be safe before I would agree to any extension. Next slide. Okay, so what I just wanted to point out is, and this is a puzzle to me, the MOU about the plan and the emergency plan, we received that in December 2023, and it is dated 2007. Should there not be an updated one? I don't know, but concerned. And then I just wanted to say, I attended a 2014 emergency exercise and a 2022 one. I think these are extremely valuable exercises because they reassure us or raise concerns, but they give an indication of how prepared Eskom is for an emergency and how prepared the city is. And I just want to go back to the fact that Eskom has a responsibility to ensure that these things are happening, that there's enough finances to make it happen. And I presume you guys have to check that the money's there to make the exercise work. So I just want to say, because it's a newish board and a new CEO, is I have asked both times to address the panel, to address the board, and say, you know, I've taken the trouble to not only attend the exercise, but write a report and submit it to the NNR. But never have I received an invitation to come and explain or talk or discuss my observations. So from a civil society engagement perspective, I think that's a fault. You know, why aren't you engaging to say, okay, you raised these issues, you know, this is what we've done in response. What do you think? What solution do you have? Like, I think that's an important part of engaging with the NNR. Otherwise, it makes you seem like you're on Eskom's side, and you shouldn't be. Then in 2014, so firstly, what I also want to say is well done, Keith, because Koeberg, if an emergency was to happen and there had to be an emergency plan, it would be fine on site, in my view. I think they are well prepared. But the moment you step out the boundary, it's a disaster. And that's not okay. So 2014, the wind direction has always been a bit of a wobble, and there was certainly some concerns. 2022, I noticed extra weather people everywhere, checking like to make sure that we've got the weather right. That's critical. So I think, well done. That's improvement. It's a bit worrying that when it was 8 years, so I don't know how long it took them to improve. But 2014, I noticed, I'm just giving you these examples, that transport, if there's an emergency, people have to move around. Now, there's a lot of people working at Koeberg, so if they had to be evacuated, is it really going to be effective for them to all use their cars? If people in Cape Town have to be evacuated, how are they supposed to be evacuated? So there was nothing in 2014. In 2022, I see there's reference to an agreement with Golden Arrow buses. But why can't we see that agreement? What does it say? And what does it cover? Then the attitude of the city is of serious concern. I don't know if there's anybody from the city actually here. But in 2014, they said, well, we didn't respond to Koeberg because we thought they jumped the gun. In 2022, they just didn't pitch in many cases. When we were at that site, there was so many city departments that were not there. I'm not going to talk to them all, but to me, the city was a no-show to a large degree. We also found out, but now I'm not sure, so I have to say, I don't quite recall where we learned this one, that the Defense Force was supposed to have provided the showering decontamination chambers. I think I'm correct there. And it turned out that they've actually got rid of them or sent them to another part of the country or whatever. They weren't actually available. So this emergency plan is supposed to be current. It's supposed to be able to be tomorrow, today. If we need to, something happens, we should know what we have to do, and the city should be there. But they're not, in my view. The other thing is in 2014, I noticed, and I didn't find out what happened in 2022, I spoke to some of the people that were helping out, and they said they'd been brought in to practice for a few weeks to make sure that they would look good, I guess. But that's not how you don't cram for an exam. If you're supposed to be part of emergency, you must be ready all the time. So So this is a serious concern for me. So, and then I was pleased to see that in 2022 they were talking about drones. Didn't see any, but drones and helicopters and all this modern stuff, which is good. As I say, we didn't see it. And then I just want to raise the iodate versus iodide, because to me this is something NNR, I would love you to tell me that you've done it. But when we were on site, the Koeberg guys were saying that iodide tablets, which are necessary for an emergency, is quite short-lived compared to iodate. An international best practice, and I'm speaking as a hearsay because this is what they told me, is that iodate would be better because you wouldn't have to keep replacing it every so many years. They also said they've been trying to get that right, some procurement issue. So you know, where are we with that? Because that seems to be simple, best practice, and well within the NNR's mandate. And then the other issue which came up was that one of the American regulators raised, when you communicate, when they communicate, they send SMSs out, or the city or whatever, sends out an SMS to say this is happening or whatever. The city told us it's too expensive to send an SMS to all the people, so it's not in their plan. But Eskom's job is to make sure that there's enough money for that. I mean, I don't really believe the city because they can send plenty of SMSs when your rates are behind. But you know, there needs to be a communication system which is functioning. Next slide. So my question, and this comes down to, so that's us. I think we were regulators from Ghana and America and of course civil society. That the picture on the right is the water issue, where people who were, I mean, well done to the NNR youth who volunteered to be sprayed down, but the water's running away, and that's supposed to be radioactive water. So it clearly shows a complete lack of understanding. The other thing in this exercise was one of the nozzles didn't work. So one of the city tech people simply stepped into what was supposedly radioactive water then to fix it. Again, you can't do that. There was not a place for them to once they'd been showered off, there wasn't a place to change, social service there wasn't spare clothes. You know, like, it was just a tick box exercise. And and the issue with the water is in 2014, the same problem. So I was a little bit like annoyed with this whole thing. And my fellow regulators were saying, in other countries, if you had this, then NNR would say, shut down and fix. Not carry on for months and months and maybe get it right and come and show us. So I know that the president would yell at you if you said, we're going to shut down Koeberg because that's an extra load shedding stage. But the issue being that should not be allowed. And from 2014 to 2022, no change. That means the NNR is failing. And for the NNR to be failing is very, very serious. Because that's what we see, but what else don't we see? So for me, I'm very worried, and I would urge you guys to act on these things. Next slide. I think I'm done. Yeah. So I mean, the issue is I think there should be a lot of people involved. We need to understand what people's circumstances are on the ground and how they would be able to respond in an emergency. For example, informal settlements. Yes, we can shelter. COVID showed us we're not very good at that. And that was a very high level, you know, this is really a problem. So how are we going to do that? And the NNR process should be strengthening the regulations, strengthening control. So is Eskom providing enough money? Eskom doesn't have any money. So, you know, it's got its own problems. So the question is, should we be even thinking of extending until we're totally sure that it's working properly right now. I don't think this is a case of panel beating while you fly. This is a nuclear reactor. But I also want to say that if Koeberg pulls the switch and says we're shutting down because of safety, to me, every South African should be very happy with that. Because the risk of not doing it, the risk of going, now we're in load shedding 8, and now we better keep it going, that's not acceptable. And so I would hope that the NNR would back Eskom if it shuts down for any safety issue, because much better to be safe than sorry. Next slide. So yeah, that's it for me. I think, yes, our view is that we have Koeberg, we should not even think of extending it until we are 100% sure that it's running safely, and that includes preparations for an emergency plan, and that it's actually fixed or is fixing the amount that needs to be fixed in order for it to extend. And if that cost is so much that actually it would be better to shut it down, then I think we must make that decision. It's a safety decision. It's not an economic decision. Thank you.